On April 15, 1912, the world was shocked when the RMS Titanic sank after hitting an iceberg in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Over 1,500 lives were lost, and it became one of the most tragic maritime disasters in history. But what if everything we've been told about the Titanic is not the whole story? What if there's more to the tragedy than just bad luck in a failed ship? What if dark secrets were hidden from the public, and some of the most powerful people in the world had a hand in the disaster? Today, we'll uncover the dark truths behind the Titanic disaster and explore the conspiracy theories that suggest this wasn't just an accident at all. This is the untold story of the Titanic, one that goes far deeper than we ever imagined. To understand the Titanic disaster, we first need to understand the ship itself. The Titanic was a luxury liner known as the largest, most luxurious ship in the world at the time. It was said to be unsinkable, a floating palace that could withstand anything. But behind the scenes, there were strange things happening. There were multiple warnings about icebergs in the area, but the ship's captain, Edward Smith, continued on full speed ahead. There were also complicated insurance policies at play, and some experts say that these might have been part of a plan to cause the ship to sink. But the most chilling part? Some believe that the Titanic wasn't even the ship that was supposed to sink. Could the Titanic have been switched with its sister ship, the Olympic, in a plot to collect insurance money? That's just the beginning of the dark secrets surrounding the Titanic disaster. Let's dive into one of the most shocking and controversial theories, the idea that the Titanic wasn't actually the Titanic at all. What if it had been swapped with its nearly identical sister ship, the Olympic, before its doomed voyage? The Olympic, launched a year earlier, had already suffered major damage from a collision with the HMS Hawk. The impact left it with a twisted hull and permanent structural weaknesses. Repairing the ship would have been costly, and the White Star Line was already facing financial disaster due to the accident. But what if they found another way? Conspiracy theorists believe the White Star Line hatched a scheme to quietly switch the Olympic with the Titanic, send the damaged ship out under a new name, and collect the massive insurance payout when it inevitably sank. And the most unsettling part? The evidence might actually support this. Several eyewitness reports suggest that there were strange changes made to the Titanic just before its maiden voyage. Some workers who helped build the ship claimed that the porthole arrangement on the Titanic did not match the photos from earlier in construction, but they did match the Olympic. Additionally, the lifeboats and life vests were stamped with numbers that belonged to the Olympic, not the Titanic. And in the days before departure, workers reported hurried last-minute adjustments, as if something was being covered up. But why would White Star Line take such a massive risk? Well, the Olympic was already damaged beyond repair. If it was doomed anyway, why not send it out disguised as the Titanic and turn a catastrophe into a financial recovery plan? On the night of the sinking, many survivors noticed odd details. Some described hearing strange creaks and groans coming from deep within the ship, as if the metal itself was weakened before the iceberg ever struck. Others reported seeing water pouring into the ship from places where the iceberg had never touched. Could this suggest that the Olympic, already compromised, was sinking from its own structural failures, rather than just the iceberg impact? But here's where things get even darker. If this theory is true, it means the Titanic's passengers were never meant to survive, the ship wasn't equipped with enough lifeboats, and when it started going down, the rescue efforts seemed strangely disorganized, almost as if someone wanted the event to unfold exactly as it did. Could this have been one of the greatest insurance frauds in history? And if so, how many people knew about it but stayed silent? If the Titanic disaster was more than an accident, then we have to ask who stood to benefit, and more importantly, who had to disappear. Three of the most wealthy and powerful men in America were aboard the Titanic: John Jacob Astor IV, Isidor Straus, and Benjamin Guggenheim. They weren't just rich, they were key figures in the world of finance. And all three of them had one thing in common. They were strongly opposed to the creation of the Federal Reserve. Now, if you don't know, the Federal Reserve was the foundation of the modern banking system. It gave private bankers immense control over the U.S. economy, but some of the wealthiest men of the time, especially Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim, were against it. They feared it would lead to massive corruption and the concentration of financial power in the hands of a few elites. And here's where it gets chilling. The Federal Reserve Act was pushed through the very next year in 1913, with its most powerful opponents conveniently out of the way. Was this just a coincidence? Or were these men deliberately placed on a doomed voyage? Even stranger, some of the most powerful banking families of the time, like the Rockefellers and the Morgans, had reservations for the Titanic but mysteriously canceled at the last minute. J.P. Morgan, who had funded the building of the Titanic, was scheduled to be on board, but he canceled his trip just before departure. He later claimed it was due to health reasons, but that didn't stop him from being seen alive and well in France only days later. Did he know something the others didn't? And then there were the survivors' accounts. Some passengers reported that certain first-class individuals were quietly ushered onto lifeboats before panic even set in. Others saw that some lifeboats were sent off half-empty, even though hundreds of passengers were still trapped on board. If the Titanic sinking wasn't just a tragedy, but a calculated elimination of key figures, then the question remains, who was truly behind it? We've all heard the official story. The Titanic struck an iceberg and sank. But what if the iceberg was just a cover-up for something much more sinister? First, there's the speed issue. Titanic was moving at full speed despite multiple warnings about icebergs in the area. Survivors said that some crew members seemed unusually tense, as if they knew something was about to happen. Why would an experienced crew ignore so many warnings? Could they have been following orders from someone with a hidden agenda? Some researchers believe that orders from high above demanded the ship maintain its speed, no matter the danger. But why? Was there a schedule the Titanic had to keep, one not dictated by its passengers, but by those who stood to gain from its fate? Second, there's the mystery of the hull damage. Some experts argue that the damage doesn't match what an iceberg collision should look like. Icebergs cause jagged tears, but Titanic's hull showed evidence of small, precise fractures, almost as if an explosion had taken place below deck. Some theorists believe there may have been bombs placed inside the ship, timed to detonate and ensure the vessel's rapid descent. In fact, some survivors reported hearing loud explosions before the ship began sinking. Was this the result of the boiler rooms erupting from pressure, or was it something far more intentional? And then there's the mystery ship. Survivors claim to see a ship in the distance as the Titanic sank, but it never came to help. The official story suggests it was the Californian, a nearby vessel whose crew allegedly failed to act. But some researchers believe it was a different, unnamed vessel, perhaps involved in the conspiracy. Some accounts even suggest that this mystery ship was there to ensure that no survivors could tell the real story. The Californian's captain, Stanley Lord, later gave conflicting reports, and his failure to respond to distress signals remains suspicious to this day. Speaking of distress signals, there's something eerie about how they were handled that night. The Titanic sent multiple SOS calls, yet responses were delayed or misinterpreted. Why did it take so long for nearby ships to react? Some claim that crucial distress signals were sent out incorrectly, as if someone wanted to limit the number of people who could be rescued. Even more chilling, some claim that key lifeboats were launched half-empty, raising the question, was the disaster meant to be even deadlier than it was? Then there are the survivors themselves. Some describe the ship splitting apart in a way that wasn't officially recognized until decades later when the wreck was found. Others spoke of strange lights under the water, something that has fueled theories of sabotage or even advanced weaponry being tested. Could the Titanic disaster have been part of a larger experiment? Some claim that secretive organizations used the ship as a grand-scale test, sacrificing passengers in the name of an agenda we may never fully understand. If the Titanic disaster wasn't caused by an iceberg, then what really happened that night? And more importantly, who made sure the truth was buried beneath the ocean? The Titanic disaster has haunted us for over a century, but as we peel back the layers, we uncover a far darker story than the one history books tell us. Was this truly just an accident? Or was it a carefully orchestrated event designed to eliminate obstacles, secure wealth, and shape the future of global banking? Consider the powerful individuals who avoided the ship at the last moment, the strange financial dealings tied to the ship's insurance, and the theories that point to a deliberate plan to sink the vessel. Think about the high-profile passengers aboard, some of the richest and most influential men in America, all opposed to the formation of the Federal Reserve. And yet, after their deaths, the Federal Reserve was established just a year later, fundamentally reshaping the world's economic landscape. Coincidence, or part of a grander scheme? And what about the wreck itself? When it was discovered in 1985, researchers found strange scorch marks on the metal, leading some to believe explosions had played a role in its demise. The layout of the ship's debris field has also puzzled experts, with some claiming it suggests an unnatural breakage, possibly caused by an internal detonation. If so, then the Titanic didn't simply sink, it was destroyed. What if the Titanic was a sacrifice, one that shaped the world as we know it? The answers may never be fully revealed, but one thing is clear: the Titanic didn't just sink, it took its secrets down with it. What do you think? Was the Titanic disaster a tragic accident, or was there something far more sinister at play? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you love exploring the dark truths that history tried to hide, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Because trust me, there are even more chilling secrets to uncover.